The Black Talk Radio Network is made possible in part with help from the Black Talk Media Project, a North Carolina-based nonprofit engaged in the production and distribution of independent digital black media. Find out more by going to blacktalkradionetwork.com or blacktalkmediaproject.org and look for the menu tab, Crowdfunding Black Media. Black Talk Media Project, helping to provide you with new black media for the new millennium.
And opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium. Good afternoon. You are tuned in to Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reed, broadcasting from behind the enemy lines. I'm presently in the state of North Carolina. Among the things that North Carolina is noted for, other than HB2 bill, here's some trivia for you. North Carolina actually had the most due-paying card-carrying members of the Ku Klux Klan at its height as an open organization sanctioned by the government and what have you, with a nonprofit status. North Carolina had the most card-carrying members of the Ku Klux Klan than any other state. That's a fact. That's a trivia fact for you. Go look it up. So when I say I'm broadcasting from behind enemy lines, I mean I'm deep behind the enemy lines. Okay. All right. So today's date is May 30th. Of course, obviously you may know that already, I guess. And today is known as Memorial Day. And a lot of people, as a greeting on this Monday, will say every year to people, Happy Memorial's Day, as they go off to the beach and, go off to do whatever it is they like to do to enjoy themselves. And not saying anything's wrong with spending time with your family on a day off, but this is really supposed to be a solemn day. More so, in my opinion, from my perspective as a black person living behind enemy lines, this day really should be a solemn day of remembrance for us specifically. And we should only specifically be recognizing, or not really recognizing, but yes, recognizing, memorializing, just remembering the example set for us. Any black person or anyone who was a member of the United States military at any time, the only ones, in my opinion, who should be held in such high esteem are the Union soldiers that fought against the Confederacy in the American Civil War. Although some people were drafted, there was some immigrants, mostly primarily Irish immigrants who were drafted and fresh off the boat and forced onto the battlefields. And it really wasn't a lot of them of their fights. I'm talking about the soldiers fresh off the boat. Do want to recognize there were Irish abolitionists in this country prior to the Civil War trying to end slavery. But more than 200,000 or around 200,000 from research I've done shows that black Americans, black people, some of them free, Well, yeah, it was close to, it was 100 and something like 1,800 free black men who signed up for the military, the Union during the Civil War, specifically to end slavery. And then who knows how many more. Some are recognized, some are not, formerly enslaved Africans who had been liberated, who also joined the Union Army or fought as guerrilla soldiers, allied with the Union Army, working in concert on the battlefield, you know, in on the planning meetings and all of that, you know, those irregular troops and what have you. And so, again, you know, history is very important, and knowing that history and not getting into the mindset to where the media is controlling us and our thoughts about this particular day. You know, to be honest with you, I really came to not observe this day at all. Didn't do anything. Just another day. Just another day of, you check the record, I'm always broadcasting on Memorial Day. And so I don't take any days off. I think Context of White Supremacy, a radio program on our platforms, doing a program later. And the title that caught my eye said, you know, white supremacy or white supremacists do not take a day off. And so I, you know, did not observe Memorial Day. But now I want to thank our guest who should be joining us here in about 4 or 5 minutes. John C. Sims, who's been a guest on the program in the past, because now I am going to start engaging in a Memorial Day ritual. Remember specifically the troops that I already talked about, the Union soldiers who joined specifically, and there was some white ones, John Brown's son, one of his sons, I think it was Owen Brown, who we did a profile on another radio program, New Abolitionist Radio. He volunteered, and I think he even commanded, you know, because they only allow white officers, and he volunteered to lead, you know, black men as they, you know, killed their way across the South to put down these enslavers and what have you. So we should be recognizing those people and their sacrifices on this day. And speaking of John Sims, I do believe we have Mr. Sims joining us now on the line. Do we have you, sir?
How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing the best I can behind these enemy lines in the Deep South, just like yourself, you know, as a black man. But I was just telling people, the listening audience, John, how I had came so cynical of more I learned of this false history that's been taught to us that I did not even observe Memorial Day. And because of you and because of this burn and bury ritual that is, I believe this is the first annual, you know, Confederate flag burning ritual on Memorial Day. Is that correct? The first annual?
Well, we kind of started it last year, but this is the year where it really becomes ritualized. You know what I'm saying? Because last year was the 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War. You know, so we started it kind of with 13 states.
Right.
The 13 southern states, part of the Civil War thing. But now it's all states. You know what I mean?
Right. And we talked to you.
So this is kind of the first national one that we're doing.
This is the first one to take place on Memorial Day?
No, we did the last one on Memorial Day too.
Okay.
But it was more for the 13 southern states. It was called 13 Flag Funerals.
Right. So this is the first one just specifically.
It's national. Yeah.
Right. Got you. But
because and the first one, we kind of focused on funeral, the word funeral.
Right.
And this year it's more on the word burning and burying. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we kind of switched the language up a little bit.
Well, like I was saying, you know, I was not observing anything on Memorial Day because I became so cynical about the nature of how it's being promoted, the establishment, we shall say, the media and government officials and what have you. But now I will start observing Memorial Day because of this, and I want to thank you for that, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And we just got to get more folks next year to make it bigger and brighter and hotter. You know what I mean?
Right. And I understand that Max Parthis, who is a host and one of my comrades in the New Abolitionist movement and whatnot, he should be on right now, and so I'm definitely going to check.
Yeah, he's going to be coming in at
4 o'clock, I think.
At 4:30.
4:30. Okay,
yeah.
4:30. So definitely, these are being saved. I did check yours out. I saw yours, and Edward, what's his last name? The professor who came on.
Yes, Sambasta. Yeah.
Say his name again.
His name's, I think it's Sambasta. Sebesta, yeah.
Okay. Well, I actually recorded a portion of his. He did like 40 minutes. I recorded 10 minutes, man, and he was giving some great intelligence that I'm going to share with my listening audience later. Yeah. But he was sharing some good intelligence on the Neo-Confederate movement and what have you. But look, I don't know if you had an opportunity, but I did upload my little ritual to YouTube.
I saw that.
Yeah, man. And you know, I do think that when we talk about Memorial Day, how they have nationalized it and say it's for all soldiers, well, all U.S. soldiers were not fighting for in the cause of liberty and freedom and what have you. You know, that can only be applied to, in my opinion, and studying the history, to a select few, and certainly all those who participated on the Union side. You know, in the American Civil War. So I wanted to add that into my ritual, is to recognize, because there's a lot of false history being taught, man. And if people knew how much we participated in our own liberation, you know, the North would not have won without the participation of the free black man. They called them freemen back then, as well as the liberated African who then joined in the war effort. So I think it's important to remember that. Your thoughts? I'm sorry, John. Did you not hear me? John, are you there? All right. Let me see if John. We're showing you still on the line, but we're not hearing anything from you, bro. All right, something appears to be going on with Mr. Sims. In just a moment, we'll have him back on. And so, as I was stating, listeners, we will later play that clip from what the professor did. Okay, yeah, it does. It look like we lost John. All right, let's see if we can get our guest back. We have some technical difficulties there. See if we can get him back.
This person cannot be reached at the moment.
All right, so I guess we're going to have to continue without our guests. You know, these technical issues do arise. I don't want to say, you know, things are deliberately happening, but you got to wonder sometimes. So I am going to start participating in this. And I'm going to share with you the audio from my flag burning of the Confederate flag, because symbolism is important. That's why they raise these flags, and they have all these white supremacist monuments in front of courthouses, supposed to be places of justice. But how can it be a place of justice when it's given a place of honor to such despicable people known who were fighting to establish the Confederate States of America, and their number one aim was to keep black people enslaved. All right, so yeah, this is one I did earlier and uploaded, and I hope more people participate. And you know, before I play it though, somebody has said, well, I don't own a Confederate flag, I don't want to buy one. Obviously, we don't want to buy any Confederate flags and help people who make these things profit. So, but you certainly can print it out on a piece of paper and burn it, symbolically showing your opposition to what Mr. Sims has called in his track Burn and Bury, which we played on this network. You know, this is visual terrorism. This is visual terrorism, and it's the Civil War II. Welcome to Civil War II. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get us a listen.
Greetings, this is Scotty Reed of Black Talk Radio News, and I'm participating in the Burn and Bury tradition. John Sims, who is an artist who started the Burn and Bury tour of the Confederate flag, he has a project that he has organized, and he's asking, or he's attempting to make a new black tradition on Memorial Day of burning the Confederate flag. Before we get started here, let me just say that Memorial Day has been reportedly started by formerly enslaved African soldiers who laid wreaths upon the graves of Union soldiers and reburied the dead and whatnot. So there is some question about that, but there is no doubt that whether or not they started the first Memorial Day or whatnot, that did take place. And I would submit to you the only U.S. soldiers that the black people in the Americas should be memorializing on this day is the Union troops who defeated the Confederacy in the name of ending slavery. Now, the job is yet to be finished, as the U.S. Congress and President Lincoln betrayed the Union troops and put an exception clause in the 13th Amendment that allows for legalized slavery and human trafficking. If you don't know that, go read the 13th Amendment. So the fight is still on. We still need soldiers in this battle to end slavery once and for all. So with that said, let's go ahead and burn this flag in memorial of the Union troops who gave their lives and killed to defeat people who would keep other human beings in chains and enslaved.
Let it go, burn and bury the pain and the woe. Burn, bury, let it go, burn and bury. The stars and bars, no more. And with any war, flags are very important.
So this is going to be my new ritual every year on Memorial Day, and I think it's important not to just make it about banishing, obliterating, burning Confederate flags, which should be done. The statues and memorials should be melted down or pulverized to stone, or the so-called ancestors of these people who fought to keep slavery in place can come get these things and put them on private property. They have Confederate cemeteries, Confederate soldiers only. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. If you must. Unless it would, if you want to purchase it, if it was paid for by taxpayer funds. But from my research, the sons and daughters of the Confederacy and those different types of organizations, they paid for them and just, got the politicians and legislators at the time, people in charge, city managers and whatnot, to allow them to erect these things in the public square. And they can take them back and put them on at their headquarters or wherever they operating, whatever property they own. But I think it is past time to kick these things out the public square, cause to tolerate them, as Mr. Sims says in his Burn and Bury video. I also know he did a remix, but he says to ignore these things, and I'm paraphrasing, to ignore these things is to send the wrong message. And that message is that everything is fine and okay and we don't matter. So I also think they are an insult and an affront to every single soldier who picked up arms, every abolitionist guerrilla fighter who picked up arms, who risked their lives, who got killed and killed others to end slavery. It's an affront to their memories. You know, I don't know. I don't live in Germany. I'm going to have to ask my cousin, one of my cousins who was stationed in Germany at one time. I never got to that part of the world. But how do they treat German military veterans' graves and whatnot that, you know, got killed in World War II, fought under the Nazis and whatnot? You know, do they allow, because from what I know, the Nazi flag is banned in Germany. I don't know. I don't know that for a fact, but I think there are laws on the books, and obviously people can break laws and wear Nazi, you know, symbols as armbands and even wave flags. And you know, if they get arrested, they may get arrested, they may not get arrested. But I do recall reading that, you know, that Nazi swastika, that flag, everybody knows that symbol is banned in Germany. And so I'm sure they're not planting Nazi flags on the graves of Nazi soldiers, German military. In their, if they have national cemetery like the United States has for its military, different places, Arlington is the most known. So, you know, no, we don't have to accept these things, cause to accept those is sending the wrong messages. Mr. Sims sends that message through his art, that these symbols, we cannot tolerate them, or it's to just say it don't matter. It don't matter. And then you let these people numbers grow. You do nothing to oppose them on the battlefield whatsoever. And then before you know it, you know, another shooting war breaks out and people ain't prepared for it and what have you. So you at all times, because we know, and then most of these people get this. Most of these people don't even know they actually won. They fought for the Confederacy. They actually don't even know the major concession that was made to them by the U.S. Congress and Lincoln. All right. If a person just read the 13th Amendment, you would know slavery was never abolished by the United States government. That it was simply moved to the prisons. And through the prisons, they could be leased out to private individuals, businesses, corporations, just as it's done today. That was a major concession. A lot of blood was shed to end slavery, only to be, betrayed by the establishment in 1865. That's why I don't memorialize or mourn for Abraham Lincoln, because his entire life story, as has been told to us, is a fraud. It's a fraud. Yeah, the Lincoln Memorial needs to be pulverized too. Maybe they could sandblast the face off of it and maybe put, Frederick Douglass' face on there or something like that. But the 13th Amendment was a major concession to the Confederate States. And a lot of these people don't even know that, how they won. Some of them do now. Some of them do. And that's why they heavily invested in private prison markets and what have you. That's why they, their primary focus of their business is centered on providing private services to prisons, jails, what have you. Billions of dollars are being made annually off of slavery. And so on Memorial Day, as I recognize and remember the great sacrifice that, people on the call for the cause of abolitionism of slavery, they made some great sacrifices, man. And to be sure, the Confederate States of America would not have been put down without the participation of the 200,000 or so black Union soldiers and irregulars. Wouldn't have been one. The Union would have been, it'd have been over, man. Maybe it would have been two different countries on this continent, this space that USA Inc. is occupying right now. Maybe that's how with most black people in the North, and more black people trying to escape. Who knows how it would have played out if Lincoln finally didn't give in to Frederick Douglass and others, black leaders and white abolitionists of the day, to allow black people to pick up arms, join the Union Army, and put down the Confederate Army. When he gave in, shortly thereafter, it was over. It was over. They surrendered. Only again to, negotiate a pretty good deal in their surrender and being able to continue to practice slavery as punishment for a crime. And the rest is history. Black codes, targeting black people, targeting all these people who had been freed and what have you. Great betrayal. That should be Lincoln. That's who he should be known as. Not as the great emancipator, but the great betrayer. This is history. This isn't some bitter, angry black man sitting on these digital airways telling you ain't no good white people. I'm just telling you that ain't no good one. The great betrayer. And why I do not mourn his execution. So it's a lot to remember on Memorial Day. We should use these as teachable moments. Teach the youth instead of letting them be taught from curriculum that we know is Europeanized and does not reflect the truth, especially as it pertains to black people in this country. They will have you believe that, good white people, if they had not given their lives to end slavery, then, slavery as it was known back then wouldn't have came to an end. No, that's not true. Once the black man got into the fight, the black woman got into the fight, then it was over. Same thing we see during the American Revolutionary War. Check the history. Anybody want to challenge me on my facts, cite some history. Check the history of how the racist enslaver George Washington prohibited black people from joining the military. Also women from joining the revolutionary troops. I'm talking about the U.S. military. It wasn't even the United States back then. But the colonies, the colonial army, and what he barred black people. He was a racist. He was a rapist. And it was only when he was losing, he saw that the rebels at the time they were called were losing to the British troops. Where they were losing, man. Only then did he lift the racist ban against black people, free black people and enslaved Africans. Because you had cowardly, rich, white, wealthy men who would not get on the battlefield or was too old or whatnot, and they could send a enslaved African to serve in a colonial army in their place. But yet these people are given credit for establishing this nation. When they sent a proxy, an enslaved proxy at that, to fight against the British in their state. And then, talking about the British trying to enslave them and what have you, and they send a enslaved person to fight on their behalf. But it was free black people, as it always has been. They joined. Research from North Carolina shows over 400 troops classified as African descendant joined the efforts. And without the black men, who knows, we might be still known as a colony or a set of colonies of the crown. A lot of so-called Americans act like, they miss that sort of thing. And you know how they tune in and watch the Queen of England, and whenever they have royal marriages, and they buy into all that kind of stuff, you know. So they act like they want to be, subjects of the crown even now. But again, man, this isn't taught for a reason. What's that reason? Because they want you to believe in white supremacy. If they were so supreme, they wouldn't have needed our help, would they? They're not supreme. Not supreme. And that's what we need to get through to a lot of people's minds. This history is hidden for a reason. They want you to think you worthless. They want you to think you ain't got no kind of battlefield skills. You haven't done anything. This whole nation wouldn't even exist, man, without us. But yet, I don't understand throughout their history how we have allowed them to implement, right after the conclusion of the colonial war, why did all those free black soldiers and others who were against slavery, why did they allow Washington and them to allow slavery to continue? I don't know. Should have been another civil war, in my opinion. You got to think. And then, still didn't pick up arms and fight against them when the Virginia slave codes first passed the first what could be called white supremacist code, and stripping black people free. Obviously, no slaves were ever allowed to own firearms, so just them putting in stripping black people of their right to Second Amendment rights to own firearms, that tell you something right there. There are a lot of free black people. Let them take our right to own the gun. They took away the right to vote. I don't even know if we ever had a right to vote until black Civil War veterans demanded it. So, I mean, they killed for that right. But back then, they took the white supremacist code. A black person couldn't testify in court against a white person, couldn't even defend themselves against a white person. Meaning, if they came up and assaulted you like George Zimmerman, grabbing on Trayvon Martin, just, running up on you, put their hands on you, and you couldn't even defend yourself. That's in the white supremacist codes and the slave codes, the section of the slave codes. Why? I would love to be able to go back in time and see what the circumstances was that it took until the 1800s for masses of black people to finally pick up the gun and put them crackers down. I don't mean to be cruel, but that's what they call themselves down here. Put these races down. And I don't know about the intellectuals that followed that period. I ain't never heard W.E.B. Du Bois. I ain't never heard what's the guy that started Tuckasegee, Booker T. Washington, any of the so-called black intellectuals. And they made, contributions, made observations, and offered up suggestions that I could say were constructive. But I ain't never heard them talk about the 13th Amendment and the fact that Abraham Lincoln, the entire U.S. Congress, betrayed every Union soldier, everybody who gave to that war effort to end slavery by putting an exception clause to slavery in the 13th Amendment. That has never really been raised as an issue until, from my research, the 1960s. Black Panther Party people, even like Angela Davis today, is an abolitionist and talks about it, calls it the prison industrial complex. But again, on this network, we call it slavery, the continuation of slavery that was never abolished. So on this Memorial Day, we should be remembering those who were betrayed. They got, they did get a lot of us momentary freedom, But they just didn't grasp. I mean, they didn't grasp that betrayal. They just didn't. I don't know if it was illiteracy. I'm sure a lot of black people could read back then. Frederick Douglass knew Lincoln was a fraud, called the Emancipation Proclamation a stupendous fraud. These are historical facts. And without a doubt, we should memorialize the people who died on this continent in the American Revolution and the Civil War. They were the only ones really fighting for freedom. The rest of the wars, give or take a few, was really about white supremacy. White supremacists from different nationalities fighting among themselves on who's going to take what land from Aboriginal people and what have you. Acquiring land that they occupy today, like Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoan Islands, and all of that. So, we have to be very selective about who we call freedom fighters and who we honor. What were they, and that's not to say, because I'm a former military veteran and whatnot, but that's not to demonize anybody who is a veteran or whatnot, because a lot of us were young people, a lot of us were drafted, whether it was the Vietnam War, the Korean War, World War II. You didn't have no choice, or you go to jail, or you go on the run. Find some country that'll take you, where you can not be forced to go fight for white supremacists on the battlefield somewhere. So, that's not to demonize anybody that was tricked, coerced, brainwashed, and what have you, the masses, the rank and file soldiers, what are referred to as cannon fodder and all of that being used, even today in Iraq, Afghanistan, all over the planet for corporate gain. So, I'm way overdue for a break. We got about 20 minutes or so left in the broadcast. If you have any thoughts on this Memorial Day about this project to burn and bury these flags, you can give us a call. Studio line is 704-951-5030. Hopefully we won't have any further issues with that line, but the conference line is 641-715-3660. The participant code is 549-032 #. Those already dialed in, just hit *6 and 1. When we come back from this short break, we are going to take a listen to Edward Sapasta. I believe that's how you say his name. He'll tell us his name. Who shares some very good information on neo-Confederates, which are just white supremacists. Some of them are white supremacists if they got political power, economic power, or they are wannabes if they just some poor white people on some white pride trip, white nationalism type stuff. All right, so we'll take a listen to him share some great intel on the neo-Confederacy and some of the churches in the United States of different denominations who give these sons and daughters of the Confederates, members of these organizations, allowing them to use their sanctuaries and so-called holy places to do whatever it is they're doing in these churches. And I think he explains some of that. You're listening to Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reed. We'll be back on the other side.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Black Talk Radio since 2008, providing new black media for the masses.
I'm broadcasting. This is Ed Sebesta. I'd like you to see this book.
This is a real thing. Confederate Flags Matter, Christian Influence of the Flags. It's published by H. Rondell Rumberg. And if you notice in the stained glass of a Virginia church, there's a Confederate battle flag. H. Rondell Rumberg was a former chaplain-in-chief of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. He publishes as editor the publication Chronicles of the Chaplains of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. They mock the Black Lives Matter movement. And 2 issues of the Confederate Veteran, the Lieutenant Commander-in-Chief, blocked it. So this is a book. Well, I happen to have a feeling about the Confederate flag also, and I'm going to demonstrate it right now. Here's my barbecue, and here it goes. It's really, the Confederate flag is really an atrocious symbol. The Confederacy was an effort to support white supremacy and perpetuate slavery. Had it been successful, it would have been a horrific impact on the Western world and indeed the whole world. Now, let me assist this thing a moment, sorry. Well, it's browning. Hey, hang on one moment, gang. I'm slow roasting it, but I want it to burst in flames. Excuse me one moment. There we go. It's burning. Oh! Burning me. My theme is burn and learn, so I want to go on to the next topic. And this is the second national Confederate flag. And people talk about the battle flag, but they don't realize there was other Confederate flags. And this one, let me show it to you. You know, there's a little page here.
Right, it seems to be some issues with the file.
Flag.
All right, here we go.
This is the flag of the Ku Klux Klan. It is the flag donated to the Museum of the Confederacy in Richmond, Virginia by the United Daughters of Confederacy, North Carolina Division. They're really proud of this flag. If you notice, there's a stamp there because they're so proud of having a real Klan flag, they made it into a postcard. When you hear heritage, not hate, don't believe it. And you notice, as part of this Confederate theme, they have Robert E. Lee and they have Stonewall Jackson. The Confederate organizations in the early part of the 20th century saw the Ku Klux Klan as a heroic effort of ex-Confederate soldier. They saw the Klan as part of Confederate heritage. All that nonsense you hear about the 1960s Klan misappropriating the Confederate flag is just that. Nowadays, neo-Confederate groups sweep that underneath the rug. So we're going to burn this Confederate Klan flag. Well, let's get the other one going. Well, you can just slow roast with the rest. I guess Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson are going to burn too. Both really quite obnoxious individuals. Robert E. Lee had one of his runaway slaves whipped and had brine poured into the wounds. Have you ever had a small cut and gotten like lemon juice on it or salt water on it and it burns? Imagine what would happen if your back was lacerated by whips and someone poured brine on it. It'd burn like hell. You'd rather be in hell, actually. So, in Stonewall Jackson, he was just a religious fanatic, a supporter of slavery also, and an obnoxious person in general. The slow roasting, I know some people like it, but I like to see them burn. So just give me a moment, I'm going to burn them. There we go, much better. Ha! Wow. So, sometimes in the South, and maybe elsewhere, fraternities like to fly Confederate flags, but they know they might get into a peck of trouble. So what they do is they run fly Confederate flags that you don't recognize. This is the Bonnie Blue flag right here. And don't let them tell you that it's the flag of Somalia. Somalia has a much, much lighter blue. But I've seen fraternities, especially those Confederate identified, flying this flag. That's one of them. Here's another Confederate flag that you might see a fraternity flying. Or sometimes some individual in the neighborhood likes to fly it, and he feels he's clever that he's getting away with it. I'm trying to remember which one that is. This is a Confederate flag of Missouri Regiment. There's all sorts of Confederate flags out there. So keep alert. When you see some oddball flag, it might be a Confederate flag. On the other hand, it might be some other country's flag, so don't jump to conclusions. But if you have some fraternities on your college and you're thinking they probably would fly a Confederate flag, they might be flying one of these. Okay, this flag burning is dedicated to Colin Phillips. Let me give a little background story. This is a flag they buy, or people purchase at Louisiana State University. Louisiana State University twiddles their thumbs and says they can't do anything about it and makes a lot of damn excuses. But way back in 2005, Colin Phillips was leading a pretty effective protest against it. Then they had a meeting which he couldn't talk about. They got an African-American officer of the university, and it was some type of discipline thing, but he was not allowed to speak of it, and that was the end. They shut it down. So what happened to him, and also Isaac Netters, isn't forgotten. And Catrice Albert, you should be ashamed of yourself. I think that Louisiana State University should lose their accreditation until they rectify this situation. So let's burn this guy. And also all the students at LSU that buy that flag, remove your head out of your rectum. So, coming down to the last flag. This is the flag of the Citadel. And I want to show some other Civil War South Carolina flags. This is one of them. You notice that this is a moon, crescent moon, and the palmetto in the red. And then here's the South Carolina state flag adopted in 1861. The palmetto was added in 1861. This flag of South Carolina is a Confederate flag. It's good they got rid of one of them. They need to get rid of the other. So the Citadel, during the Civil War, had their own regiment, and they had a flag also. There it is. It's a Confederate flag. You'd think by 2016 they realized they should regard their participation in the Civil War as a Confederate unit as a mistake, but they still think it's a great thing. They still celebrate Big Red. And I think they ought to get their heads out of their rectum and get rid of this flag. In fact, South Carolina, get with it. So that's what I want to go over on that. Hold on one moment. I'm going to have to ignite these again. This slow burning I'm not patient enough for it.
All right, man. I'm sitting here thinking as he is talking about these flags, and I'm definitely going to try to get the video recorded off of Periscope because they don't really have like an embed feature or a share feature to get Mr. Sebesta, Edward H. Sebesta, who is a writer. I think he's also a college professor, but his segment's like 43 minutes long. That's like only 10 minutes there, but just that information that he shared in the 10 minutes breaking the code, giving you insights into the code of white supremacists and racist wannabe white supremacists. You know, they on their way as they, you know, go to college and what have you, and because they know you recognize the Virginia battle flag, you know, as a symbol of racism, as a symbol of terrorism, as a symbol of slavery and whatnot. So they use some of these other flags from these other regiments and that you won't know about unless you've done research. So Mr. Sylvester did great work in revealing these flags, you know, and now you know what to look for. Now you can identify, if you're on a college campus, a den of racist, white supremacists, wannabes, possibly white supremacists trying to make them connections, or a racist trying to make them connections to become full-fledged white supremacists. Now you can spot them. Now you can take aim. You have a target to engage in your counter-racist activities and direct your energies, because, you know, I am not one of those. There's a time to be passive in situations, and then there's a time to press forward on the battlefield. White supremacy, racism, and slavery, from which it all is derived from, will not end itself. They're not going to stop themselves. Them black people knew that back in the 1800s. Them white abolitionists knew back in the 1800s that they ain't going to stop on their own. We going to have to pick up arms and shed blood and take lives. And indeed, they still have not stopped. I don't know what it's going to take. But I know Malcolm X said by any means necessary. Many abolitionists said that as well. So that is what we're dealing with today. So this was the Burn and Bury Memorial Day project put together by John Sims, who we had some technical difficulties with earlier. But you should be able to catch these at 3 o'clock. Jill Novinsky, who is an art activist, broadcast from New York City. Again, this is all on Periscope. From the Detroit Barbecue, D. Lanice Timor Goolsby and Rhonda Welsh are poets. They did a burn and bury thing. Then we have Charles and Bars, Madeline Fitch, who is a writer. Then in South Carolina at 4:30, this should be ongoing right now. And again, definitely going to check out the video recordings. But from South Carolina, Max Parthis, host of New Abolitionist Radio, right here on the Black Talk Radio Network, and then closing up at 5 o'clock in about 7 minutes, which you'll be able to catch it as we go off air at 5. Live from Skid Row, Susan Stovall, who is an artist and singer, who's going to close out the John Sims Project sponsored Burn and Bury Memorial, the live broadcast. So check those out. We have linked to it as they start a new ritual on Memorial Day. And I'm saying, you know, some of those people are white. And certainly, you know, abolitionists, none of that matters. None of that skin color and all of that. All you need to do is recognize that slavery is happening. It needs to be abolished, and do something in whatever capacity you can to end it. All right. So, but particularly black people, especially those descendant of enslaved Africans on this continent, I think this should be adopted as a ritual, a Memorial Day ritual. In the barbecue, in the middle of the barbecue, just call everybody to order and say, you know, at this time we're going to recognize our ancestors who fought to, first of all, establish the United States, and second of all, to do their best to end slavery. And now it is up to us to, you know, finally bring it to an end as we burn this symbol of slavery and white supremacy, this Confederate flag. Some might even want to incorporate the United States flag into it, because slavery It's never been abolished under that flag. All right, so, but, today we are memorializing black Union troops who gave their lives, who took lives to abolish slavery. It's not their fault that they were betrayed. It's not their fault at all. But instead of being angry, or now we should be angry. Let's be angry about it, but let's constructively target that anger where it belongs, and that's abolishing this system of slavery. That's what I recommend. That's what I'm gonna do. All right, today Tando Radio Show will not be on air, so but you can stay tuned in as we continue broadcasting 24/7 on Black Talk Radio Network, the digital radio station providing you with new black media for the new millennium. But I will be concluding today's live streaming. Definitely check out the archives on blacktalkradionetwork.com. Other independent stations. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the Context of White Supremacy's digital radio station is doing a program. I believe it's usually around 8 o'clock p.m. on the weekdays. So I imagine that's the same. There are other stations in the media player you can check out, and in the menu tab you can click on and catch different black radio stations from different places around the world right there for you on blacktalkradionetwork.com. I guess we are going to close it out. Let me see what I can close it out with. We're going to close it out with some beats, some God Life beats from Brother Sincere Nokwari. He's been a guest on the program. We're going to close it out with Beat Tape Lectures Volume 1. Let's check out At the Crossroads. At the Crossroads. All right. Y'all be safe out there. Recognize we do live behind enemy lines. It is a battlefield. Slavery is still the law of the land, and we need to overturn that law. That said, peace and blessings to all.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mr. Christian Champagne.
I'm a Dubai ranking perfect. I'm a Baker killing in D.C. Cause I know Obama, y'all can kill my mama. I'm moving east to D.C.
What you got? If you got to buy a safety pin from your former colonial master, then you're a liar when you say you built a state. You're a sham. If you're gonna build a state, then everything that's needed to maintain that state should be ready. You should have trained people to handle your harbor. Your people, not Martin's.
I'm a Dubai ranking perfect. I'm a Baker killing in D.C. Cause I know Obama, y'all can kill my mama. I'm moving east to D.C. I'm a Dubai ranking perfect. I'm a Baker killing in D.C. Cause I know Obama, I'm gonna make some money. Mama, you gon' be proud of me.
When you don't have all those things functioning for you in your hands, you're an imitation of a state. We have done the wrong thing with our children. Let them have that choice about what to study. You study what we need.